now you're known as the lady whose kid went missing versus all the things you've done in your life. And I can't even imagine what that feels like to walk in a room and that be the thing that you're known for. So sometimes it's just about people being able to be people and understanding and have a heart to say, even though I know that that's something that she has gone through, she doesn't need me to look at her in that way. She doesn't need me to bring it up. She doesn't need me to ask her questions. Like, just hold that space, and if she wants to talk about it.
I want you to imagine sitting on the other side of the desk of grief. The people that have to handle, the ones that have to endure the grief, and the ones that have to make sure that they go through the process correctly. Today we have Zjohnae Milton. She is a grief specialist, and she's come on today to give us the other side of grief, not from the perspective of the victims or the ones that have to deal with the victims. Hi, Zjohnae. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. So, we want to kind of start off by kind of telling a little bit about you and how you got into the field. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to this it's a very special field to be in?
Sure. So, pretty normal life growing up, from a little city called Sarasota, Florida. Left home just for a little while when I went to school in Tallahassee, Florida A&M. And it was there that I kind of started my journey into the social service. My father, shout out to my dad, he struggled with substance abuse in my childhood a lot. And it caused a strained relationship with he and I, a very misunderstanding of just people and my relationships and how I attached, and so I started the journey of wanting to learn people because of that. And by the grace of God, he was able to get clean. He went to rehab, and now he's actually a minister. And our relationship was restored through my work in the substance abuse field. So initially, I went into substance abuse, and I did that for many, many years. And through substance abuse, I had the pleasure of working with families and children that have lost family members due to overdose and addiction and things like that. It was from there that I kind of grew a bigger heart for grief and understanding that that is such a hard thing for people to embrace and process and just deal with. And so I swayed from substance abuse into grief basically because of that, having been introduced to it through substance abuse, and then wanting to grow my theoretical approach and my understanding of grief. And so now I am a grief specialist actually through Empath Health, and that's like what I do. That's all that I do. But it's not just substance abuse, it's like all types of loss and grief just as a whole.
Okay, so
so here we are.
So when you say grief, a lot of people, when you think about grief, I think that people have something in mind as a loss, right? But I want you to kind of give more of the definition of grief and what different losses that can occur with grief.
Well, I mean, grief is just any significant loss. I think when people think of the word grief, they think just traumatic death related loss. But you can experience grief symptoms from losing a job. You can experience grief from losing a house or losing a dear friend, a relationship, and then any type of actual grieving the loss of a person, whether that's, died by natural causes, died by their own will, died by suicide or overdose and different things like that. Or you can grieve a situation where there's all these unknowns and you don't have any closure. You can grieve that situation as well. So grief in layman's terms, because I do teach grief education to children, I just tell them it's the really big feelings and emotions that you have because something is no longer there.
Okay. So today, you know that you're on Missing Our Voices, and this podcast is for missing persons. So the grief that's endured with missing persons it kind of goes for a long period of time because you can't really get a closure of that grief or really come to terms with the right type of grieving, due to the fact that you're still in the process of trying to figure out the knowns and what's really going on. So I went and did a little bit of research, and I found out that there's like 5 different stages of grief. Can we go over some of those, so we can find out exactly like what those things would be like, would look like for the ones that are missing their loved ones?
So when you looked up the 5 stages of grief, what did
Yes.
you find?
I think I want to say anger.
Okay.
Anger was one. Depression was one. It was, I don't remember all of them, but I knew when I first heard anger, I knew that that had to be the very beginning of it, because when Jabez went missing, I was just mad at everybody. I was mad at people that might have known, people that could have been some kin to the people that took him. I was literally just angry. And I see, when I conduct the interviews with families that are in the same situation, they have some of the people, when it's still very fresh, or sometimes it can be fresh, it doesn't have to be fresh, but they're just still very angry that there was something that happened here that either they could prevent, that someone else could have prevented. And then I also have people that I interview, a lady named Erica Davis. When I first met her, she was in the state of depression. She was in the state of depression so bad, as though she was literally trying, they had put her on medication because she was not, on an everyday basis, she wasn't able to cope like that. And I talked to her, and I told her, because I didn't want to try, even though it was requested to me to get on medication, because at some points of me grieving, it was like I knew that I was kind of a little bit out of touch with reality. I could feel that. um but I told her to like pour herself into working for others, because that's where I kind of found my that's where I found my outlet at. And I don't know if it's that's a part of grieving, but I know that was one of the things that made me feel a little bit better.
Right, right. So okay, so let's dig into that a little bit.
Okay.
So you definitely hit 2 of them. Anger and depression are stages of grief. There's also denial. There's also acceptance. There's the bargaining phase. And you said something that kind of stuck out to me. You feel like anger is the first one because it was just so much of it in the beginning, and you just were angry at a lot of different things and people and the situation itself. There's really no actual order to the way that we feel grief and the way that we go through it. Everybody's journey looks different. There are some
Okay.
people who, off the bat, get angry because I feel like, and this is just my clinical understanding, anger is the easiest emotion to have. When you lose somebody or you're confused about something, being mad is expected. People expect you to be angry. So when you're angry, you can put that out. Um, it's harder to feel open to the other grief symptoms right off the bat because they're a little more heavy and people can't hold your stuff. And really, when you look at grief, people tend to fall into those stages based off of their environment. So when we look at the different stages, you said something too about the lady that you interviewed and at the time that you met her. There is no time limit to grief, and even more so for people who don't have closure. Because what exactly are you grieving? You don't know the situation in its entirety. You don't have that peace of mind of what happened. And so you kind of get stuck in this space of limbo about how to feel. And that's very normal. It's very common for people who have experienced a missing persons type situation to still be grieving years and years and years when they don't have that closure, because it's very common and normal or you can know that your friend from high school died of a heart attack and still grieve that for years and years and years. There's no time limit on how the heart heals. It's really just your journey and what that looks like, and it looks different as time goes on. I tell people all the time, get comfortable in your grief because it's never going to go away. It's like a wave, and sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, sometimes it's everywhere, sometimes it's a little sprinkle, but it's always there. It just changes form and intensity. And so I think that people who have other people in their lives that are telling them, get through your grief, or why are you still angry? Why are you still sad? Why are you in your depression? Well, that's your grief to hold. And if they're uncomfortable with it, then that's their problem.
Now it's a couple things that I want to, and I hope I remember all of them. When I was telling you about the anger part first, that came for me first. Um, I'm a very strong person, so my anger came from I wanted accountability. It wasn't, I don't know, it was like I wanted somebody to hold the accountability of the hurt that my family had to endure. I think that's why my anger hit me first. And with the other lady that I was talking about, I think that because it was her only son, she went into depression because her loss was just an overwhelming sense of I lost my whole world. I have two other sons, you know what I mean? And two stepkids. So I have and a grandbaby. So I still have some things to hold on to. But when you lose like the only child you ever bared, I mean, I don't know if you get angry, it's a different, like I said, it was two different types of loss that we had and that we shared. And you're right about people don't want to carry your grief with you. And just the littlest things can make you grieve. Like I have and it makes me like in my voice, I can hear my voice cracking. I have a problem seeing teenage boys on bikes because my son love to do tricks and stuff on bikes, and every time I see it, I go into this, nobody knows. You know what I'm saying? It's only me, but I go into this really like spiral of like, wow, and all the things that I think that could have been possible, and then why would they do this, or why would this happen to me, or and just sometimes I think to myself like this could easily I tell God like you could have easily just gave this to somebody else. Why would you do this to me? And then I think to myself, you know what? I don't know if I would have wanted this to go to anybody else. Even if I didn't like someone, because the carrying of this burden of this grief, it's just heavy. I lost my father in 2011. Um and it was a major loss and the hurt was more of me seeing my mother hurt more than anything. That's where my hurt came from my father because of how I looked at my mom hurt. It was just so profound the way I could see like the life was being drained out of her in certain points. But when Jabez went missing and then them to discover his body on the side of a road, it just was um it's a very heavy burden to carry. And when you carry that, when you walk in the room and you have that burden, people feel that. They feel that energy. And I can tell sometimes when I'm in a room and I'm the girl that has I'm now known as the girl that had the missing kid. I'm not known really as Tawana. I'm not known as like I accomplished a couple businesses in my life. When I walk in the room, I'm the girl that her kid went missing and was murdered. I'm in that club that nobody wants to be in. You know what I mean? So the grieving process is a little bit different than just like when my father died of a heart attack from when you have someone go missing, because nobody really knows what to say to you. They just don't know what to say. It's almost like you become the weirdo of something you never signed up for.
Cannot even imagine. Cannot even imagine. That's definitely very heavy. And sometimes it's not even about what do you say to the person that has lost a child or their child went missing and was murdered. It's just more of holding that space for them. Because like you said, there's going to be moments where people, they don't need you to say anything. They don't want you to do anything. They just want you to be there. They don't want you to be feel weird around their energy. They don't, like you said, now you're known as the lady whose kid went missing versus all the things you've done in your life. And I can't even imagine what that feels like to walk in a room and that be the thing that you're known for. So sometimes it's just about people being able to be people and understanding and have a heart to say, even though I know that that's something that she has gone through, she doesn't need me to look at her in that way. She doesn't need me to bring it up. She doesn't need me to ask her questions. Like, just hold that space, and if she wants to talk about it, if she wants to
Right.
process it, then I'm here.
Do you think that in grief you go through every stage? Do you think that you might have certain stages you go through and you might not go through other stages? Because I don't know if I ever went through denial.
Right. So yeah, and that's another thing, because everyone's journey looks different. You're not going to hit all of the stages. You may, and then you may not. I have a young lady that I work with, and her son was murdered. He didn't go missing. It was known rather quickly that her son was murdered, and she was in depression for a long time. That was the only grief. She was angry for a bit. Then there was the depression for a long time, and then now she's finally coming into the space of acceptance. So all the other stages didn't even, there was
Right.
no bargaining, there was no denial. She was angry, she was sad, and now it's like, okay, I'm healing. I've accepted this thing, this terrible thing that I have to, deal with for the rest of my life. And how do I move forward? So, no, sometimes people don't go through all of it. Sometimes you have one or two that are very, very heavy and you work through it. And sometimes you do hit all of them, and it just depends on, again, your environment, the type of person that you are, the type of loss that you're experiencing. Like, you lost your son, so your other sons lost a brother. Although you guys are grieving the same person, your grief journeys will look different. So
Right.
whereas you're angry, one of your other sons or both of your other sons may look at, like, dang, I lost my brother, my friend, so I'm not angry, I'm sad. I
Right.
don't know what, no, this can't be happening. Maybe they did go through the denial. He was so young, like, no, not my brother. Whereas you, like, I want answers, I want accountability. Like, I'm mad, I'm mama bear. So it looks different even when you're grieving the same person.
Do you think there's a difference between grieving and mourning? And if so, what is that? What's the difference of that?
Mourning, by definition, is that outward expression, the actual crying, the actual being upset visibly, the acting out. Grief is specifically the emotions, the inside, how you feel. Um, so when you're in mourning, the things that you do, the wearing of the black, the planning of the funeral, the going through their things, and all of that is, I'm in mourning.
Okay.
I'm mourning this loss of a person. I'm doing things actively because I've lost this person. And
Right.
then your grief is the feelings behind that. So the mourning sometimes lasts for a couple of days and then it's done. That grief is forever.
Okay. All right. So, for instance, like when I'm around other people and I'm in my grieving moments, and you can tell that they kind of want it to me to be quiet, or they don't, because I've been in spaces, or really honestly, because I don't have closure to what happens, my grieving process is still going on, right? But I sometimes suppress my grieving due to the fact that I don't want to bother other people,
Sure.
and it feels a little bit unfair to me. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like people just like, okay, it's happened, it's over. You need to go on with life, and sometimes you're not able to go on, like especially when someone's missing. You're kind of stuck in this one particular area in your life, even though you're trying to make sure you move and you get things did and stuff like that, but it's almost like you're stuck in this like loop. You know what I'm saying? And it seems to like sometimes bother other people, and I want to know how can you get through that part of it?
So you should feel like that is unfair because it very much so is unfair. I think that it's human nature on both sides. Number one, to feel uncomfortable with situations that they don't have a connection to or they don't understand. So I don't know what to do with this. I don't know what this lady's going through or what she's feeling, so I don't want to touch it. And then on the other side, it's also human nature to want to connect, for people to understand, hey, I've got these really big feelings. I need to share and carry this load. So when you have those two things working against each other, it makes for a very uncomfortable situation. And depending on the type of person that you are, like you said, for you, it's more of a, I don't want to, force this on anybody. I rather just stifle it the way that I feel than to force somebody to carry this with me. I tell people all the time, there is a place and a time for everything. When it comes to your grief, if it is to a point though where it's overwhelming and you need somebody to help you carry that, it's you owe it to yourself to get with people that can help you carry that, because you have to. Stifling it for too long will start to kind of make you resentful just for people in your life in general, and feeling like I've got to carry this by myself when that should not be the case. So it's hard sometimes to decipher when and where to do that. There are some people who just absolutely cannot hold your stuff, period. And that's not healthy. That's not a healthy environment for you to be in when you need it. So just kind of surrounding people in your life that okay, when I do have my moments, I can call this person. When I do need somebody to just be in this moment with me, I can go and sit with this friend or this cousin or this sister or brother. Um, and have those people that understand that, like, okay, if she's calling about this, I need to be in this moment with her, because it's going to be those people that understand that, and then it's going to be those people that don't. And unfortunately, that's just not something we can get away from. So it's just more so knowing who your village is,
Right.
and them having the understanding of, when I need you, and them being willing participants to be there.
Well, I guess that goes into, because I was going to ask you about, sometimes, it gets a little bit heavy because I ended up with anxiety. I don't want to claim that. I rebuke that. But it's hard for me to go into crowds now after what happened. I don't know if it's because of being kind of paranoid of who's who is safe and who's not. Does that make sense? Like sometimes I feel like,
Mhm.
because I don't know what happened to him, I don't feel like I don't know who's safe and who's not. You know, and it just goes back to just I think with missing persons, at one point, no matter what part of it is in the journey, we just want our lives to go back to normalcy. And I don't think that a lot of us realize, like, there is no normal after that. It's just not a normal after that. But we want the normal to go back. How do you start to get your life, you think, back on track to the things that you once were doing, and trying to get yourself back into the system of trying to make of healing and making yourself whole again? How do you do that?
Sure. So when we think about normalcy, what's normal anyway, right? But I try and tell people that when you have lost someone significant in your life, and there's a situation where you're still in the grieving process, or it's still very fresh, or it's still very heavy, or you feel like you haven't had that closure, there's never going to be normalcy, but there can be a sense of normalcy. And that just kind of is like getting back into a routine. It may not be the routine that was before, but we adapt. We as humans, we are made to adapt to change because things are always changing around us. And having to keep that mindset and actively moving towards that when you're dealing with grief, because no, you're absolutely correct. It will never be the same as it was before. That person is no longer here. You have all of these feelings surrounding that person no longer being here. And things that you used to do in your life is not going to be the same because directly affected by that person no longer being here. But we can still get a routine. We can still find things that make us happy. We can still find things that make us smile and bring us a sense of peace in regards to it. People like to throw around coping skills. And I feel like that is every day what brings me peace of mind, what helps me to have a happy face, put a smile on my face. Self care, like all of these things can help us gain a sense of normalcy. And I think that that's important. But again, no time frame on that because it may take people years to get to a space where they even feel comfortable making themselves happy. They feel like, I don't know what happened to my person. So how can I enjoy life? Or I still have all of these unanswered questions. How can I be happy? How do I move on? And so when you feel ready to start to move into that space, I would say start with a routine, changing up a routine that feels comfortable, and then start to explore what makes you happy, what makes you smile. Who are you outside of who you were for this person? Like for you, that was your son. Who are you outside of being a mom? And start to find things that make Tawana happy and not Tawana the mom happy. Because when you think about being a mom, I know for a fact your son crosses your mind. So it's like when you think about you yourself outside of your special person, what does that look like? And start there.
Wow. You covered a lot. I had questions and everything written down, and you have touched base with a lot of the stuff that
Yeah.
I was really wanting to know in so many different ways. Is there any advice that you would give them before we go?
I would just say don't let anybody tell you that you are drawing this out. If you're still having big feelings and you're kind of feeling stuck in your grief, that is okay. That's normal. You have lost somebody very special and significant in your life. Continue to seek those answers. Continue to be hopeful that you will find those answers and allow yourself to feel, embrace and give yourself grace because again, grief never goes away. It just changes intensity and the volume in which you receive it. So just be patient with yourself and be understanding that not everybody is going to be able to hold that space for you, but it's important for you to hold that space for you and find your village.
Miss Middleton, I'm so happy that you came on. We've been trying to do this for a couple weeks, and I don't think that people realize when missing persons go missing that there is a side, a mental side that is a strain that's very important for those people to have an outlet for. And I thank you so much for coming on and giving your advice. I'm going to close. This is Tawana Span with Missing Our Voices. We just have heard from Zjohnae Milton. She is a grief specialist. If you need any information on any type of mental health of grieving process, please get in contact with me at 941-822-5256, and I will get in contact with her to make sure that she can point you in the right directions. This is a very important part of missing persons. It's very important. You cannot fight this battle if your mental is strained, and you need to have assistance in that area. That's why this interview is super duper important to me. Very super duper important. And to all the families that are grieving, take it one day at a time, one step at a time. And there's help out there. Ms. Middleton has let you know that there's help and there's assistance. Reach out to somebody and find your village. Thank you and God bless.